Cannabis has been around for centuries, for social use, industrial hemp, or as the main ingredients for medicines. Nowadays, we need proof, scientific proof, translating people's experiences into evidence-based facts. But the knowledge is out there for ages. Did you know? Three men and a woman are sitting around a table. They are singing, drinking beer, and smoking. The man on the left is raising his beer glass in a toast. Apparently, it is not his first drink. The man on the right wets his finger with saliva to push certain contents into a pipe before he takes a deep drag. On the table lays a pipe and a white paper in which this smoking gear is kept and preserved. What you are seeing is nothing less than a precursor of a modern Dutch coffee shop. They are smoking tobacco mixed with hemp. If you think cannabis has only been around in the Netherlands since the 70s, you are dead wrong. This painting was made more than 350 years ago by a fellow painter of Rembrandt, the Rotterdam painter Hendrik Martenzoen Sorg. At that time, there were many artists who specialized in painting the raw life, often using various inns as examples. Tobacco was introduced in Europe by Columbus, who discovered it on his voyages to the New World. For the common man in the Netherlands, tobacco was very expensive. People started to experiment by adding spices such as hemp. At that time, this plant was widely grown in the Netherlands for industrial purposes. This kind of painting was intended to strengthen morality. They were not small portraits of everyday life, but paintings to show people good and bad behavior. The addition of hemp to tobacco saved money, but as a bonus, also improved the smoking pleasure. So, now you know. When you return to this mundane sphere from your visionary world, you would seem to leave a Neapolitan spring for a Lapland winter, to quit paradise for earth, heaven for hell. Taste the hashish, guest of mine, taste the hashish. This is a passage from the novel The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. He describes the intoxication of being stoned. After the failure of the French invasion of Egypt, many soldiers smuggled hashish back to France. Psychiatrist Jacques-Joseph Moreau was intrigued by the effects of hashish on the functioning of the human brain. A small dose produced a sense of euphoria. At a slightly higher dose, the sense of time became distorted, and with a little more hashish, dreams flooded the brain. These dreams, Moreau felt, were the hallucinations of insanity. In Paris, Moreau met writer Théophile Gautier. The intellectual elite of the French capital were fascinated by the tales of 1001 Nights. They were eager to consume hashish and get high. The two men decided to establish a hashish club. From 1844 to 1849, the club Les Hashishans met once a month at the Hotel Pimodan to experiment with hashish. Moreau shared, as the drug dealer of the club at the beginning of the evening, Daw-a-mesk, a mixture consisting of hashish, pistachio, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, orange juice, butter, and sugar. When handing this over, Moreau stated, "This will be deducted from your share in paradise." When I left the group, I began to hear celestial voices and see divine paintings. So, now you know. Insomnia, migraines, asthma, menstrual problems, maternity pain, hysteria, erection problems, blisters, or simply a dry cough, all improved by the use of cannabis. About 150 years ago, when one needed to go to a pharmacy, the most important ingredient in your medication was cannabis. The founder of this medical revolution was an Irish scientist, William O'Shaughnessy. In Calcutta, he became fascinated by the ancient use of cannabis by Indian physicians. It's the year 1833. William began experimenting with cannabis on mice and rabbits, but soon with rheumatoid arthritis patients. He discovered that many of his patients felt less pain, had more appetite, and felt far more alive. On his return to England, William took cannabis seeds and plants along for the Botanical Garden of London and for his fellow pharmacist, Peter Squire. This bioengineer on Oxford Street turned it into a form suitable for medical use. His cannabis extract was added to tinctures, alcohol-based liquids, combined with other opiates and herbal extracts. After the appearance of the cannabis extract in the UK market, physicians began to issue prescriptions to young and old for a variety of ailments. Dr. John Reynolds, the personal physician of Queen Victoria, was one of the UK's leading doctors who prescribed cannabis to his patients. It was the golden age of medical marijuana in the Western world. After opiates, cannabis was the most commonly used ingredients in the drugs that were available in European and American pharmacies. Large pharmaceutical companies such as Eli Lilly and Park Davis, now Pfizer, created their own cannabis medicines that went to market. However, this came to an abrupt end when the Marijuana Tax Act was adopted in the United States in 1937. Cannabis was now forbidden and even listed as a poison. The worldwide use, research, and development of cannabis as a medicine came to a complete stop. So, now you know. Reefer madness. Marijuana turns weak King Turner into a deadly weapon, a conscienceless killer with no more human feeling than a hooded cobra or mad dog. This is the cover of Marijuana, a 10-cent paperback from 1941. At that time, people relied on magazines, books, and movies for their daily information. The idea that a man beats and murders after having smoked a joint for the very first time. This fits perfectly within the hysterical anti-cannabis propaganda of the U.S. government of that time. During the 30s and 40s, the aim of the anti-cannabis campaign was clear: create fear among the U.S. population. Harry Anslinger, head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, gave impetus to the article Assassin of Youth in 1937. In The American Magazine, he wrote, "Marijuana is the unknown factor under the presently known category of narcotics. Nobody knows if he smokes it, whether he is a philosopher, a cheerful Frenchman, or a senseless madman or murderer." In the following years were not only articles and novels of this genre written, but also several films were made with a clear anti-cannabis message. Reefer Madness and Marijuana, with John Wayne in the lead, are the best known. The message of these one-dimensional and rather melodramatic plots was simple. The spice of the devil turns people into violent and sexually uninhibited samples of the devil's dark trade. So, now you know. What if you would suffer from pleurisy, jaundice, or the plague in the late Middle Ages? People were dependent on medical textbooks, alchemists, and quacks. Medicines were found in the world around you, nature as a source of its existence. The cannabis plant has always been a part of the centuries-long medicinal tradition. The Kruidboek, or herbal book, from the Flemish professor of medicine and botanist Rembert Dodoens, is the earliest reference to cannabis from a Dutch source. It was published in 1554. Dodoens, who is also known by his Latinized name Rembertus Dodoenus, lived from about 1517 to 1585. He began his career as a city physician, but eventually turned out to be an imperial physician of Vienna. He became a professor of medicine and treated many of the greats of his time. Dodoens' book contains a detailed description of the growth and development of the cannabis plant and its many medicinal and industrial applications that were known at that time. Chickens lay more eggs by eating hemp seeds. With people, the seeds expels jaundice and, combined with white wine, cures liver diseases. Milk or porridge with hemp seed helped against lung disease, pleurisy, and rapidly growing pains or cramps. It also worked quite well in helping one to sleep. However, Dodoens warns that if you take too much, you would sleep far too long and too deep. Even then, the plant offered solutions. Hemp branches drove away bedbugs and fleas from your bedstand. So, now you know.